go. Are you focused, Corey? All right.
Larry, how are you?
Good, Josh.
I'm sure that you've had the chance to maybe watch the film off the weekend. Just maybe some general thoughts on what you saw out of your group, out of both games.
Well, I mean, I thought, we were really good for the majority of the game against Oregon State. I thought we generated a lot of offense in our transition and playing some defense, with the exception of the first 6-8 minutes in the Oregon State game. I thought we did a really good job on those two elite scorers in Ethan Thompson and Trace Tinkle. And there was some energy in the building defensively. Once we got through the 11-day layoff, I thought it was real positive. And then Oregon, the margin for error was just more slim, I think. Pritchard really, that's a guy that has a lot of reps under his belt and being talking about some high accolades. And there was a handful of times where we lost track of him and he made us pay. I was really pleased with the fact that we only turned it over 7 times and we allowed 6 3-pointers against the Oregon team, which had been making a lot of them. And Pritchard, two were deep. And then Justus hit the only one he's hit all year. So there were some areas that we did some good things, but, still, I thought there were just way too many mistakes. There was a period where we didn't guard one-on-one. I thought we were inefficient on offense at times. We missed some layups and tip-ins at the rim, which when you look at the film, 5 seconds later, they're laying it in. So the combination of those things, and then late in the game, we had a hard time with some defensive rebounding. And then the other night, we talked about the shooting. We missed 10 open threes in the first half, which I would take any day of the week. And then a handful of free throws. Those are all extremely costly. But, we had a really productive film session yesterday, and we're looking forward to practicing 4 out of the next 5 days and see if we can get better. I mean, as I told our guys, it's not really a mystery. It's not like we're grasping for things and trying to figure things out. It's a matter of just tightening it all up. And as I've said many times over the years, there aren't any little things. Just when you think, you let down your guard and have one of those mishaps, that Oregon team, and it was crazy too, offensive rebound wise, as we watched the film, we would have, at times, we would have 3 guys blocking out one guy, and I'll be danged if that one guy didn't get the ball because it bounced maybe in the right spot or there was a little mishap. So, it was hard to watch after the fact because there was a number of those little plays where you say, man, we'd like to have that one back. But overall, I think we played really hard on the weekend, and we tried to share the ball. The assist total wasn't there against Oregon with only 9 of them, but there were a lot of potential assists that was the right play. So we've just got to figure out a way to kind of piece it all together, and getting the win is the key, and we weren't able to do that the second game.
Can you talk about Colorado's team this year? And also, I was wondering, it seemed like you're pretty close with Tad Boyle, and I just wondered maybe where you give us a background on where that relationship started or how it evolved.
Yeah, I think there's some similarity in the fact that Tad came from northern Colorado, was there for a few years, Big Sky Conference. I came from Montana, probably small town kid mentality. And Tad was here a year prior to me, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the conference. I think he was hired the year before I was hired. So we've been in a lot of meetings. We sit in a lot of gyms watching kids. I think from a geography point of view, we're recruiting a lot of the same kids, and I'd like to think that we run our programs in similar fashions. And we share information with each other on scouting reports. With being a travel partner, we obviously play the team just before they do, and vice versa. So I think there's some tidbits there, but he's genuinely a great guy, and I enjoy spending time. And he's not the only one. There's some guys in our conference that I feel the same way about. But on paper, they're one of the top teams in. Not on paper, but they've accomplished it. I'm thinking back to preseason with the predictions and stuff. But they have a lot of their firepower back from a year ago, and some of that experience and size. I think they have 3 components that you need in order to win some games in terms of individual players, and they've certainly got one of the best point guards in our conference in McKinley Wright. Some quality bigs, throughout. Tyler Bay's one of the better bigs in our conference, and Batty is a big guy, Seward, and then a lot of shooters around them. So I think they've got those elements, and they certainly guard very well and share the ball. So we've got our hands full. We've always seemed to have some real interesting matchups. There's not going to be a lot of secrets between the 2 teams and what it is that we do. With a lot of those conversations over the years, you kind of give away some of your own secrets when you're talking to each other about how to beat another opponent. So it's usually a high energy, physical game, and we've got to be ready to scrap at the only place that we play at that's actually a little bit higher in elevation than we are. We're the travel pair that plays at elevation, so we got to be conditioned as well. We're not talking much this week. No.
When you were recruiting Booth when he was in high school and you would watch him, what position was he playing primarily? And at the time, what did you think he would project as a college player?
Well, I think initially it wasn't so much watching him in high school, Compass Prep in Phoenix. It was his AAU program, and Coach Connor and I were it was the tail end of one of the AAU sessions, and we were actually in the gym to watch another player, and sitting right behind us or playing a game right behind us on multiple courts was Booth, and we probably watched the first half of the game, and if I recall, we didn't really discuss what was going on behind us, but he kind of kept catching our eye. And yeah, the game that we were there to watch. And I think about the time halftime hit, our chairs kind of shifted a little bit. We started looking over, and the reality is, when we had a player here, DeLon Wright, once you have a guy like that, you're kind of looking for the next DeLon Wright. And there was a lot of similarities in terms of body style and movement. And so we started watching him. He's got the ball in his hands a lot when we were recruiting him, and we saw him as a point guard, combo guard, but extremely athletic. And he kind of looked like a young thoroughbred. When you see somebody that's got what it takes, and he had kind of some natural mannerisms that reminded us of a DeLon. So we recruited him very hard.
He gets here, and I haven't been here that long, but, the games that I've seen, he looks increasingly comfortable at the point with the ball in his hands. Do you see that at all, that, with each passing game, he seems to be getting more and more comfortable when he's handling the ball?
Yeah, no, I think that's all part of a learning curve for him. He's really good in the open court, so he can play with Rylan. It's a little bit like when we had Brandon Taylor and DeLon playing together in the backcourt. A lot of times, a team will have an elite defender maybe in the backcourt, but not 2 of them. And so I think with Brandon and DeLon, we were able to, if somebody wants to get into one of your primary handlers, instead of almost having to shut down because you don't have the other guy to facilitate, then you're able to, switch gears a little bit. And so I think Booth and Rylan have the same kind of, potential, where we don't have to lean on the one guy to carry the load. But we're trying to score in transition, and if Booth is not the point guard on the court, then we want him to get out and run the wing, which he's very capable of doing. You've seen him when he makes up his mind to to get up and down the court, and try to encourage him to rebound it, and then he can start the break himself. But he's doing a nice job. He gets in the lane. I think we've seen him, finish a number of times, and he's made a number of passes that are great for our shooters. But kind of the top down is what I would encourage him to do more of. Try to get on the rim. He's a great free throw shooter as well. So making great progress, in his second year. And there's a lot of different coverages and pick and roll and different things that guys see, and they have to be able to make different decisions out of those. So he's making really good progress.
At the start of the year, you talked about Alfonso Plummer being one of your best shooters, and he really hasn't played much the last couple of games. And maybe you needed shooting last game, but I just wondered if it's other things that he's not doing, or is there a lack of confidence in having him play, or anything you can tell us about that?
Well, I just think that we've thrown a lot at him, defensively, offensively, and that's been probably the challenge is his concentration and remembering some things. It's a lot to ask. Defensively, he's made some progress, but in our practices the last few weeks, to be honest, he hasn't been shooting the ball with a lot of confidence. So we've had some discussions internally with him, and trying to get on the same page. We're going to need him. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to engage our bench more, and that's going to be on me in some regards, and some of it's going to be on those guys. And we had this discussion in a meeting yesterday that it's a two-way street, this trust and belief and different things. But we certainly can't play 3 or 4 guys 30 plus 35 minutes a game and expect to weather the storm through this conference. And so I'm trying to encourage guys to step up and simplify some things for them, and we'll see what happens this week.
Coach, you beat Kentucky, you beat BYU, you are into the final seconds against Oregon. Is there something to be said about playing to the level of competition? This team really gets up for the games against big level talented teams.
Well, I don't know if that's we kind of had a little hiccup when we were in Myrtle Beach. That was kind of an odd starting that tournament, playing against the home team in Coastal Carolina. I don't know if you can place too much emphasis on that and say, man, we're gonna, because regardless, in our conference right now, we got a lot of good teams. So it's I like what I see when you get on that type of stage. We didn't excel. The game was a lot closer at San Diego State up until the last 15 minutes. So it's hard to say that completely, but I like the way our guys compete, and so when the popcorn's popping, and when we've got that Kentucky game was very much a road game for us, even though it was in Vegas, and we haven't shied away from some of that moment. But each game is a different story. We can't kind of put that in your back pocket and go, oh yeah, we always show up for these big games. But I am proud of the guys for staying in games and making plays kind of at that crunch time when there's the BYU game, the Kentucky game, the Minnesota game, some of those games right there, decided by a couple possessions. I thought we made the plays that we had to. So that's certainly encouraging, and it's a lot more positive than the flip side of that.
And then I know you had a little bit of a break with the holidays, but you've had a lot of practice time too. Now you have a whole week off before the Colorado game. How much do you relish these opportunities to really get to work with the team?
Yeah, no, that's important. I mean, you need to there's different phases of the season. Once we finish the Colorado game, it's on, and it's a little bit not quite as intense as an NBA schedule, but there isn't going to be a whole lot of massive improvement where you can hit some things. And I think this last week and this upcoming week are going to be key. Our team needs to improve, and it kind of goes hand in hand with Mike's question about our bench. Opportunities there in practice. We need to get, instead of maybe playing a rotation of 8 guys and playing heavy minutes, I'd like to get 9 or 10. And this is a chance for those guys to do it. But this week, I think, is going to be obviously a lot about Colorado, but it really has a lot more to do with us fixing some things. And there are some consistent themes, I think, with our next 3 opponents, too. We don't have to specifically talk about Colorado because the same thing applies for Arizona and Arizona State. So some of the overall concepts that we need to address, the rebounding, the defensive transition, those things we're stepping into in the next 3 games. So they're a little bit of a scouting report, but at the same time, they're things that we need to very much improve on.
Just back to Booth for a second. When he's running the point and you have a lineup with him and also Rylan in the backcourt, you're asking Rylan to play off the ball. He's been a point guard his whole life, but at a time when you ask him to go off the ball, is he comfortable with that, or is that still very much kind of like a learning process for him?
No, I think it's fine. What we do is not necessarily 1 point guard and 2 wings and 2 bigs, and you depend solely on one person to get you into offense. I think we've, and even more so this year, we have 3 perimeter players, and a lot of what we do is interchangeable. So Timmy might be using a pick and roll, and Rylan and Booth are on the perimeter, looking to knock down shots and move, and vice versa. Any of those guys can handle it. So I don't think it's encouraging to know when you have multiple guys. I think back to when Louisville won the national championship, they had a bunch of guards playing with 2 bigs. So sometimes I think it's more productive if you can have playmakers, at those 1, 2, and 3 spots, and bigs that are doing their thing at the same time. That can make you more effective. But Rylan's, I haven't talked to him about it, but he's a player. He just wants to be on the court, and he wants to do what it takes to help us win. And I think you're going to see both of those guys make some positive plays. A little bit different dynamic in how they go about it, but it's nice to have, another pitch to throw at a team.
I just had one more on this topic, if you'll indulge me. Booth would seem to have a lot of the tools that maybe some pro scouts like, with his length and his athleticism and his ability to handle the ball. Big picture, if he wants to get to the next level eventually, what is maybe the biggest not deficiency, but what is the biggest thing that he still needs to progress with in his game?
Well, no, I don't think there's, any one thing. I think certainly from a defensive point of view, there needs to be more of a sense of urgency. Have to have the ability to do guard a lot of guys. That I'm not going to discuss NBA potential or what he needs for that. I'm talking about what he needs to. I'm only concerned about winning games and whatever he needs to do to win games. So I think there's consistency with those. But the NBA stuff to me is not anything we ever talk about. I think he needs to put on some weight in the weight room. Get stronger. He's working his butt off. Rock does a nice job with our guys. And then I think consistency. Consistency is one of the biggest things with the effort. Has got to be consistent, and it can't be, an offensive energy and a lack of defensive energy. So we need very much a 2-way approach to this thing, and we got to get dialed in and guard some guys in our league, defensive transition wise, and pick and roll coverage and different things. So. You bet. All right, guys.